Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Germany once again, and we're going to continue on with this little mini-series of German reviews that I've been doing for you over the last few videos. Now, for this review, we are going to return to a brewery that was featured on the channel a good few times before, albeit I believe it was 2018 or so that was the time that I did the last review from these guys, which is just crazy to think. But they are actually quite a recognisable German beer brand, and they do some really nice stuff in my experience. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is one of their harder to find beers. It's a style that I really quite enjoy and has featured on the channel quite a few times before, but I'm really curious to see what this brewery's take on it is. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then we are going to head to a little place called Kelheim, which is kind of between Ingolstadt and Regensburg in Bavaria, and that means that we're going to have a look at yet another beer from the wonderful Klosterbrauerei Weltenburg. So this particular beer is the Anno 50, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, or the year 1050 as it would be in English. It comes in at 5.5% ABV, and this one is a Märzen lager. So for those of you who don't know, the Märzen as a style is usually a kind of amber coloured lager. It's a little bit stronger than other lager styles such as the Helles, the Pilsner, and the Dunkel and the Schwarz beers and things like this. But yeah, it was actually brewed normally in March, and it fermented for a bit of a longer period during the summer. It was forbidden actually in Germany, I believe, to brew beer during the summer months because they didn't have artificial refrigeration and things like that. But yeah, this beer was fermented a little bit longer, and this was released as the Oktoberfest beer. So this is why you often hear about Oktoberfest Märzen. But yeah, the Märzen lagers I think are one of the more underappreciated styles of German beer outside of Germany. So yeah, when I saw that I could get my hands on this one from Beers of Europe, I thought, you know, we need to have a little look at this and see what it's all about. It's not too often that I get to review a Märzen lager, but I do really enjoy them. The Czech equivalent of this one, of course, would be the Letzak lager. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what it's going to have in store for us. The Anno 50, a Märzen lager of 5.5% ABV from Klosterbrauerei Weltenburg. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery and the monastery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Klosterbrauerei Weltenburg before, and we will hopefully add a few more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is massively appreciated, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the German playlist along with a number of other things, and we will of course add to that again over the next little while. So keep your eyes peeled, but let's go on and chat a little bit about Klosterbrauerei Weltenburg. So, on to my brewery notes, and I will apologise in advance for any bad German pronunciations in this review. But yeah, the Klosterbrauerei Weltenburg, as the name suggests, German is Kloster for monastery, is attached to the Weltenburg monastery, which you'll find on the Danube River near the town of Kelheim, almost in the middle of Regensburg and Ingolstadt in Bavaria. Regensburg is to the kind of north, Ingolstadt is to the south. But this brewery has a disputed claim along with the Weihenstephan, the Bayerische Staatsbrauerei Weihenstephan, of being the oldest monastery brewery in the world. And I think these guys are actually, you know, these two breweries are the oldest ones that are still in existence in the world anywhere. But the part of the Danube where this abbey is located is known to have been home to a Roman military garrison in the year, you know, sort of 45-ish AD, called Fort Hüfingen. But the monastery was founded in accordance with the rules of St. Columba in 617 by Irish and Scottish monks, namely Eustathius and Agilus of Lixoul. But in the year 800, this sort of monastery family, if you like, converted to being a Benedictine monastery. But the monks left the monastery at the beginning of the 10th century out of fear of the nomadic Finno-Uric peoples who had laid waste to Italy, Bavaria, Saxony and Swabia. But later, though, in 932, the monastery became associated with the bishopdom of Regensburg, and it was repopulated by members of the St. Emmeram's Abbey. So the monastery abbey was founded, the monastery brewery, was founded in the year 1050, and then in 1191 the abbey church was consecrated. In the 15th century, going forward a few hundred years, the abbey suffered due to the way it was run, but reform was introduced, modelled on that observed at the Kastel Abbey close by. But between 1546 and 1547, the Weltenburg monastery was sacked when war broke out in southern Germany between Emperor Karl V and a Protestant alliance. But the monastery was also sacked several times during the 30 Years' War, which was, of course, 1618 to 1648. But the monastery family, if you like, the monastery, the congregation, if we would call them that, was strongly guided by Abbot Matthias Abelin. But the monastery was also a member of the Bavarian Benedictine congregation, founded by Pope Innocent XI in 1684. Between 1730 and 1743, Abbot Maurus Bachel built many new buildings at the Weltenburg monastery, and the famous Baroque church of St. George was built by the Azam brothers between 1716 and 1739. And this is, of course, where the Assam Doppelbock beer takes its name from, and I would recommend that you try that one. But later on in 1803, the monastery was dissolved as a result of secularisation, but then in 1858, Weltenburg, St. Boniface Abbey, München and Andex Abbey was responded by Pope Pius IX. So the Weltenburg Abbey became a priory of the Metten monastery in 1842 it was granted by King Ludwig I, and then it was consecrated once again as a full monastery in 1913 by King Ludwig III. But from 1904 until 1973, the abbey was actually running an agricultural college, and that was one of their main sources of income, as well as the products that they were producing. But later on in 2006, the monastery underwent significant work because apparently the area in which it's located is very prone to flooding, so they did a lot of work to prevent the monastery from being damaged by anything that would happen with the river, rising sea levels and all of this kind of thing, causing the river levels to go up. But today the monastery is home to 14 monks, and it's been led by Abbot Thomas Maria Freihart for a good number of years now. But the brewery produces in the region of 30,000 hectolitres of beer per year, so that is, what's that going to be, about 300 million litres or something like that? No, that's a bit too much. It's probably about 3 million litres of beer per year, actually. So yeah, 3 million litres of beer is what you'll get from the Klosterbrauerei Weltenburg every year. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you guys about Klosterbrauerei Weltenburg. These guys are one of the breweries that I really want to visit in Germany at some point. I'd love to go and see these guys. I've already been to Weihenstephan once before, but it would be very cool to go and actually have a little look around the monastery and make a little out and about video or something like that. But yeah, that is, as I say, everything I can tell you about these guys. If you want to learn a little bit more about the brewery and the monastery, you can of course check out the brewery website. The Wikipedia page of course has a very detailed section on the history. You can read both the German article if you use Google Translate and the English article. I used the German one actually to lay out a kind of basic history of this brewery. But yeah, I would recommend having a little read at it, and then you get an idea about the history of these guys. And quite cool to see that they have the monastery has a little bit of a Scottish and Irish connection as well. Kind of cool that my home nation is connected to one of the oldest breweries in the world. So yeah, let's go on then and have a little look at the beer itself and see what it's all about. So just to let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up, there you can see on the label the abbey on the artwork, and this one of course, many of the Weltenburg beers are named after either famous people or famous things to do with the monastery. So people and things to do with the monastery make up the names of these beers. You can see the lovely top label on this one, And you can also see the bottle cap there. I think these bottle caps have changed a wee bit since I had my first beers from Weltenburg. But you can also see on the back it has the geography symbol of the European Union for protected Bayerische beer. But yeah, as we mentioned earlier, a 5.5% Märzen lager beer. This one we explained what the Märzen style was a little bit later on. So I think we can get on and have a little look at the beer itself. We'll get it out into the glass and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Anno 1050, or year 1050 as it would be in English. A 5.5% Märzen lager from Klosterbrauerei Weltenburg, close to Regensburg and Ingolstadt in Bavaria in southern Germany. I think we're going to get a really nice pour out of this one actually. There we are. Yeah, that's great, spot on. Yeah, quite pleased with that one, I have to say. Some of these beers poured really nicely, other ones I think are maybe not quite as quite aggressive enough on the pour with. But anyway, I will say straight away that this beer is poured pretty much exactly as you would expect of a Märzen lager. So yeah, before the head starts to recede a little bit, we can say that it's poured with maybe about a finger and a half, a little bit more, of a frothy, I would say cream coloured head. If you look at the composition of the bubbles in there, you can see some medium-sized ones just on the surface of the beer, some bumpier ones further up, and then some nice fluffy things just further up the head there. But overall, it does look very, very nice. In terms of the colour of this beer, it's pretty much what you'd expect. If we shine the light through this one, I'd say it's actually one of the lighter Märzen lagers that I've come across. The Märzens, of course, have a little bit of a spectrum. This is one of the lighter ones. They can be really pretty amber, or they can be a little bit lighter and blonde. And this one, for me, is it has got a little tint of amber to it, but certainly not the most deep amber that you're going to find. You can see it does have a little touch of natural haze to it, but for the most part, it is pretty clear. Steady stream of carbonation going up toward the surface there. But yeah, colour-wise it looks pretty nice. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect the colour of it as well. But yeah, you don't really have to care about that when it comes to Märzen lagers, or that many lagers for that matter. But yeah, nothing particularly surprising about the appearance of the beer, considering what style it is. Let's have a wee look at the aroma and see what it's all about. Yeah, smells pretty damn good, I have to say. So, for me, it kind of gives you everything that you would expect of this style. You've got the breadiness in there, you've got a slightly bigger booziness in comparison to, say, a Helles lager, for example. You've got that sweeter kind of brown sugary note coming out of it, a good little bit of hoppy character in there, and you've also got like a very nice, little touch of just fruitiness coming out of this one. But it smells very, very good. For me, there's just something about these German beers that the aroma is just very, very attractive actually. So yeah, let's break this aroma down though and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth before we taste the beer. So for me, the backbone of this beer, you've got a good little bit of a kind of wholemeal, like brown bready, maybe German pumpernickel type bread crust coming out of this one. Above that, you start to get a bit of the actual bread, of course. There's a few little woody characteristics coming out of this one for me. There is a little bit of woodiness in there, a little bit of woodiness and nuttiness comes out of this beer. But yeah, it's pumpernickel bread crust in there. Yeah, pumpernickel bread crust. The wholemeal sort of pumpernickel bread sitting above that. There's maybe a little touch of cracker to this one. Yeah, maybe a little touch of cracker, I would say. And then you've got a little bit of woodiness to it as well, which I think is really quite nice. But then you maybe get a little bit of a kind of white bready character out of this one too. Yeah, you've got the big sweeter, kind of more oily brown bready characteristics there, but white bread above that perhaps, and then you start to get a little bit of the kind of brown sugary and boozy nature coming out of this beer. So, for me, the brown sugars are really nice. You get a little bit of this almost very slightly leathery brown sugar coming out of this beer. And I think that's, it's great how that goes together. So you get, as I say, a slight little bit of leathery brown sugar coming out of this beer. And for me, the leathery brown sugars are really quite, they're really quite interesting in this one. Because I didn't quite expect it to have such a leathery character, but yeah, you get a lovely little bit of dry brown sugar in there. Above that, there's a very slight toasty brown sugar, but then you get like a straight up sweet caramel note out of this one. So yeah, that's for me what's going on with the kind of sweeter, maltier side of the beer. But yeah, sweet caramel, a little bit of a kind of leathery brown sugary note, McVitie's digestive biscuit. And then, all of these sort of things going on in this one. The malt base of this is really nice, but, when people ask me about, Weltenburger, I would always think of the Assam Bock. That's probably my favourite beer that you'll find from these guys. But the Dunkel, I forget what's it called, the Baroque Dunkel, it's also a very nice one, actually. These guys, for me, I think it's just the maltier beers that have kind of stuck in mind when I've tried the different things from this brewery. But I'm sure I've had one of the Hefeweizens, and I've had the Helles before as well. But this is certainly the first time I've come across the Märzen. But yeah, aroma-wise it is very, very nice. And to be honest, I don't think we really need to say more about the malty side of this beer, to be quite honest. So for me, it gives you everything you would want from that particular perspective. So on the hoppy side of things then, it gives you all these typical German noble hoppy characters. There's a little bit of smooth earthiness in there. You've got a lovely little bit of herbal character in the back of the nose as well. But for me, the green component, it leans again, it's got a little touch of floral character, but for me it leans to a more kind of like freshly cut grass type aroma. So a lot of that going on in this particular beer. So yeah, a little bit of that going on with this one. Lovely kind of freshly cut grass, a little bit of floral note, and you get a wee bit more herbal and earthy character when you sugar the beer up a little bit. Just going from the hoppy notes I'm getting out of this one, I really wouldn't be surprised if it's, Hallertau Mittelfrüh or something like that that's in here. It could be Tettnang, of course, as well. But I don't think it's anything like Pearl or Hercules. It's not really the stronger, the higher alpha acid hops that are going into this one. I think it's most likely straight up Hallertau Mittelfrüh, to be honest with you. In terms of the fruity side of this beer, it's again what you'd kind of expect. You've got a lovely little bit of you've got a lovely little bit of an apricot-y character coming out of this one. So yeah, a more kind of oily apricot-y sort of thing in there. Good little bit of sultana, dry white green grapey notes. It's the sultana notes that really come out of this. Big oily peary characters. Teeny little bit of dry apricot or something like that. But yeah, for me it's mainly an oily pear, big sultana, dry apricot, and as I say, a few other things coming out of this one. So yeah, aroma-wise, a lovely beer, this one. When I think about the Märzen style generally, it strikes me as being one of the slightly more bready ones that I've come across in terms of its aroma profile. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the aroma and actually have a taste of this beer now. So yeah, this one is the Anno 1050. Anno 1050, I don't know if you would actually say that in terms of the German name, but as I said earlier, this one is a 5.5% Märzen lager beer, an amber lager, and it's named after the year that the brewery was founded. So let's have a little look at this one. Slange, Skål, cheers, Prost. My first Märzen in quite a wee while. yeah, this is pretty nice actually. Yeah, aroma-wise, flavour-wise, it's kind of what I suspected it would be. It has got a big breadiness to it, and in the into the aftertaste you get more of the kind of dry, bready characteristics lingering in there. But then you have the then you have a little bit more kind of sweetness coming out of this one. Yeah. So, yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is really very, very nice. As I say, definitely one of the more bready Märzens that I've come across. But I remember with the other Weltenburg beers, they really have this lovely, just very, very smooth and dense bready character to them. And you get that in the Barock Dunkel and also in the Assam Bock, and I really like it, which is probably one of the reasons I like these, but the kind of more malty styles of beer, just the smoothness you get out of these. And that's probably why the Weltenburg beers have always kind of stuck with me in that sense. But as I always say, let's just break the flavour of this beer down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So yeah, middle third of your palate then. The backbone of the beer, you've got a lovely kind of wholemeal, you've got a lovely kind of wholemeal brown bready backbone to this one. So you get the base, which is like a kind of more crusty character, like bread crust, further forward on that middle third. Yeah, further forward on that middle third of the palate, you get a wee bit more of a kind of, you get a little bit of woodiness out of the beer and a very, very slight dry nuttiness. It's not overly pungent, of course, but then above the bread crusty layer, you start to get a bit of that sweeter kind of like German pumpernickel type bread flavour, and then above that you can feel a little bit, the next layer up is a little bit more of a kind of straight up wholemeal brown bready type character that's coming out. So, the bready notes in this beer are really, really nice, and you get a little bit more of a kind of, yeah, you get a good little bit more of a kind of grainy dryness the further into the aftertaste that you go to. But above the wholemeal brown bready layers, you get a little bit more of a, yeah, you do get a little bit more kind of dry brown sugary notes coming out of this one. I think the aroma that was picking up in the note that was picking up, the kind of leathery character, I think that's a little bit unfounded, to be honest with you. It does have a little touch of that. Like the brown sugary character in this beer is also very layered, so you can feel you've got this slightly leathery brown sugary note there. Above that, you start to get a slightly more toasty brown sugary character, and then you've got the then you've got the kind of sweeter side of things just coming out of this one too, like the straight up caramel. So yeah, you've got the leathery layer, a slightly toasty layer, then in the dead centre of your palate you can feel that little circle there where it is the straight up caramel. Then as you move further out around the as you move further out with this one, you as you move further out toward the edges of that middle third of your palate, you get more of the kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity type qualities coming out of the beer. So yeah, it's really, really interesting how that pieces together. But yeah, for me, I think that covers everything we need to say about the middle third of your palate in this one. So we'll talk about the back third of your palate then. As I've always said, the back third of the palate is going to give you similar flavours to what you get in the middle third of your palate, but they just come out in different intensities. But remember that trend, sweeter flavours tend to come out further forward on the palate, drier and more bitter flavours come out further back. But yeah, border region between middle and back third of your palate, you do get a little bit of kind of bready build up in there. Pumpernickel bread in the base, and then a slightly more wholemeal bread above that. But then, yeah, for me, the base of that back third of the palate is the kind of pumpernickel bread crust, which feels a little bit drier, of course. You've got a layer of kind of like Jacob's cream cracker. You've got the layer of Jacob's cream cracker. Then you've got a kind of pumpernickel bready layer, which feels a little bit taller and a little bit more airy. And then you've got the more, then you've got a more kind of wholemeal brown bready character coming out of this one, which again is very, very nice. But just lighter and more airy, of course. You can feel some of the more leathery, drier brown sugary characters just creeping over the top of that, the top of the bready layer on the back third of the palate, and then you've got the yeastiness coming out of this one. So the leathery yeast, the leathery brown sugar, and then the yeasty notes. So the yeasty character in this beer, it's like a really dense and sweet wholemeal brown bread. A little bit of woody character, a little bit of crackery sort of thing, as you quite often get. But then for me, it's kind of like wrapped in honeycomb. For some reason, I always get honeycomb when it comes to the kind of yeasty flavours of beer. But yeah, I think that describes the kind of yeasty character on top of the malty side of things in the back third of the palate. But definitely you can feel the flavour on the back third of your palate. It is taller, then as you come further forward into the middle third of your palate, it kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of things, then I think we can move on to that. Back corners of the palate, you do have a nice little bit of a kind of earthy sort of character in this one, and the earthiness is a little bit more present in this one, but I think that builds a good bridge with the other flavours in the beer. But as you move further forward, you get a little bit more of a kind of herbally character in there, and as you push further forward, you get a little bit more. The herbally and earthy smoothness really spreads far forward on the sides of your palate in this beer, but there's a little touch of floral aromaticity in this one, and then round the front curve of your palate, it's got a little bit of a lighter, grassy sort of thing coming out of it too. So yeah. And the grassy, the floral character is a little bit more oily. The grassy side of things is a wee bit more, the grassy side of things is a wee bit more, it's got a bit of wetness to it, but it's also kind of oily, I would say. But yeah, the green component is quite nice in this one, a bit different from what I was expecting. But yeah, let's focus on the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of the beer. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of that bready build up in there, the kind of pumpernickel in the base and the wholemeal bready character on the top. Then the base of that back third of your that front third of your palate, you've got the bread crust, the pumpernickel bread, and the smooth kind of wholemeal brown bread, and then you get that lovely oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer. So yeah. But yeah, the fruity side of the beer, for me, you've got a lot of you do have a nice little bit of kind of at the back of that front third of your palate. It's quite sultana, dry white green grapes, maybe very slightly datey as well, a little bit of that going on. But as you move further forward into the middle of that front third of your palate, it's a big oily kind of peary type note that you're getting out of this one. As you move further forward from that, there's maybe a very slight gooseberry as you reach the kind of tip of your tongue, but yeah, maybe a very slight fresh green apple. For me, it's sultana, oily pear, and they're the two dominant ones, but there is a very slight gooseberry note in this one. So I think this goes together really quite nicely. The way this beer goes together, I think, is really interesting, but definitely one of the breadier Märzens I think I've come across just from memory. So it's a big thumbs up from me nonetheless, and I think that just when I think about the previous Klosterbrauerei Weltenburg beers that I've had. They do seem to have this distinctive kind of bready smoothness to them, which I do enjoy. But yeah, let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, for me, the mouthfeel of this beer, I'd say that it's kind of top end of light bodied. Carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. Lovely little bit of oily slickness to it, which I think is good. Yeah, lovely little bit of oily slickness, and then you also get a little bit of wetness out of it the further into the aftertaste. But yeah, in terms of IBUs, I think this is fairly standard, you know, sort of 20-ish, maybe 25 IBUs. You get a bit of dryness out of this beer, I have to say, so you know, perceived bitterness and calculated bitterness and all that, so 25-ish IBUs wouldn't be out of the question for this beer either. The malty base, as we've said, bit of dryness underneath, lovely smoothness in the middle, and then you get a good sweetness on top, but that sweetness does get drier the further into the aftertaste that you go, and the fruitiness that you get out of this beer is also really interesting. It's just got a little, it's quite a dry fruity character, but has that little bit of oiliness to it as well. But all in all, I think this is a really nice Märzen, but definitely one of the kind of breadier examples that I've come across of this style when it comes to the German beers. You know, for me, it's quite clean, this one. It's not as kind of raw as you'll get from, say, the Czech Svetlis, as they would be, but this one, it's one of the breadier German Märzen examples that I've come across, I have to say. Yeah, interesting stuff. So yeah, this was the Anno Zen50, the year 1050, a Märzen beer, Märzen lager beer at 5.5% from Klosterbrauerei Weltenburg in Kelheim in Bavaria in southern Germany. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Klosterbrauerei Weltenburg as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, sláinte, skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I will see you guys in the next review. Sláinte, skål, cheers, and prost.